Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive.
From AI-inspired insights from farmers.
If you're enjoying what we're doing here, we'd love to hear from you too.
Absolutely.
Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and definitely leave a comment telling us what you want to see more of on this deep dive.
We're always looking for new ideas, and we really value your feedback.
So what farm-related mysteries are you dying to uncover?
Right.
What questions are keeping you up at night? Let us know, and maybe we'll tackle them in a future deep dive. Today, imagine stepping onto a farm for the very first time. You might picture fields stretching to the horizon, maybe some livestock.
Yeah.
But consider this. Many of the powerful compounds that form the basis of modern medicine originated not in a lab, but actually in the intricate chemistry of plants.
Right.
And this intersection, where agriculture meets pharmaceuticals, is the fascinating subject of our deep dive today. Pharma farming.
Exactly. We'll be exploring the cultivation of crops that are, engineered or selected specifically for producing vital substances.
Okay.
Things like pharmaceuticals to treat illnesses, vaccines that prevent disease, industrial enzymes, even biochemical reagents used in research. It's really a convergence of farming practices and biotech innovation. Pretty significant potential there.
And if you're maybe thinking about starting your own farm, this offers a really unique perspective, doesn't it? Could your future lie in growing not just food, but the actual building blocks of medicine?
It's a compelling thought.
Yeah. So we've looked into information from places like the Center for Food Safety, Farming Connect, trying to get a full picture, understand the science, the techniques, the impact, and what's coming next, especially for someone new to farming.
Mm-hmm.
Let's dive in.
Yeah, let's do that. And it's interesting because the idea of using plants for medicine isn't new at all, is it?
Not at all.
I mean, throughout history, cultures everywhere relied on nature for remedies. Think about common things. Caffeine, for example, comes from plants.
Right. Coffee beans, tea leaves.
Exactly. Aspirin, originally from willow bark. Quinine for malaria. Cinchona tree. Digitalis for heart conditions, that's from foxglove.
And even things like codeine and morphine.
From the opium poppy, yeah.
Yeah.
So this long history really underscores the potential that's always been there in the plant kingdom.
It's amazing when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
So bringing it to today, what exactly defines a pharmaceutical crop in modern terms?
Okay, so a pharmaceutical crop is basically a plant grown specifically so we can extract or prepare these naturally occurring bioactive ingredients with therapeutic properties.
Got it.
And then they're made into medicines. It's important to distinguish them from nutraceuticals, though.
Ah, right. Like foods that help prevent disease.
Yeah, exactly. Foods or food products that might support health, but they aren't intended as direct treatments. Pharmaceutical crops and the drugs derived from them, they face really strict regulatory oversight for safety and effectiveness.
And these bioactive ingredients you mentioned, what are they, chemically speaking? What makes them medically useful?
Often they're what we call plant secondary metabolites.
Secondary metabolites. Okay.
Yeah, these are diverse compounds like alkaloids, phenols, flavonoids, polysaccharides, lots of different types. Unlike primary metabolites, the ones essential for basic growth and reproduction, these secondary ones often help the plant interact with its environment.
Like defending against pests.
Precisely. Defense against pests, diseases, attracting pollinators, things like that. And it turns out these very compounds, developed for the plant's own survival, often have really valuable pharmacological effects in us.
So say a farmer decides, okay, I want to grow this specific plant for its pharmaceutical potential. What's the journey like from the field to an actual medicine people can use?
Oh, it's a long road. Very meticulous. First, you have to isolate the compound you want from the plant material and purify it.
Okay.
Then its chemical structure has to be fully characterized. After that, it goes through pharmacological screening, testing its potential therapeutic effects, and toxicological evaluation, making sure it's safe.
Right, safety first.
Absolutely. And then it has to pass rigorous clinical trials in humans to prove it actually works for the intended condition. Only after all that can it even be considered for commercial pharmaceutical use.
Wow.
Yeah, the whole process, it can easily take many, many years.
That level of scrutiny really highlights the importance of safety and effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
But given all that time and resource, why grow them in plants? Why not just synthesize everything in a lab?
That's a great question. And often the main driver is cost, economics. Synthesizing complex molecules in a lab can be incredibly expensive. It needs huge infrastructure, specialized skills, lots of energy. Growing plants on an agricultural scale can often be a much more cost-effective way to get these complex compounds.
So potentially leading to more affordable medicines down the line.
Potentially, yes. It offers a more sustainable source for the industry sometimes.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the techniques. Are there crops already being grown commercially right now for pharma purposes, say here in the UK?
Yes, definitely. There are several examples. Daffodils, for instance.
Daffodils, really?
Yeah, they're grown as a source of galantamine. It's an alkaloid used to help manage cognitive decline in Alzheimer's disease.
That's fascinating.
And what's really interesting is that daffodils are already widely grown for flowers, right, for the ornamental market.
True.
So the equipment, the farming knowledge, a lot of it is already there. It can often be adapted pretty easily. Certain varieties like Narcissus hispanicus or cultivars like yellow wings are known to have particularly high levels of galantamine.
That makes a lot of sense, leveraging existing agriculture. What other examples are out there?
Well, opium poppies are another major one. They have that dual-purpose poppy seeds for food, obviously,
Right.
but also crucial alkaloids like codeine and morphine for pain management. And then you have oilseed crops like borage and achium.
What are they used for?
They're grown for their gamma-linoleic acid content GLA. It's used for conditions like multiple sclerosis, diabetes, arthritis, even eczema. And there's research into others too, like false flax and safflower.
So it seems farmers are really adapting traditional know-how for these specialized crops.
Mhm.
How do the yields compare, though? Like tons per hectare versus, say, wheat?
Yeah, generally, the actual biomass yield, the sheer weight of plant material, is often lower than for big commodity crops.
Okay, that makes sense.
But profitability is still definitely possible because the value of the compound you're extracting is so high.
Right. It's about the value, not just the volume.
Exactly. The key things are choosing the right crop for your specific farm conditions, getting the growing conditions spot on to maximize that compound, and harvesting at just the right time using the right techniques.
And storage, too, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Proper handling and storage after harvest are vital to keep those valuable compounds stable. And yeah, sometimes you might need to invest in some specialized equipment for processing.
If a farmer is thinking about getting into this, what's the absolute first thing they should do?
Number one, without a doubt, find a buyer and get a contract signed before you plant anything.
Really? Before planting?
Absolutely essential. That contract needs to spell out exactly what growing conditions are needed, the characteristics they want in the plants, the price, everything. Sometimes a buyer might even handle the extraction part too.
So it takes away a lot of the risk for the farmer.
Exactly. It guarantees you have a market for what you're growing. Trying to find a buyer after harvest, that's a risky game in this specialized field.
Okay, that's a crucial point. What about the legal side? Are there special licenses needed?
Yes, legal compliance is huge here. Some crops, like industrial hemp, the low THC kind, definitely require specific cultivation licenses from the government.
Yeah.
For others, like opium poppies, the farmer might not need the license directly, but the pharmaceutical companies processing the crop operate under really strict licenses. So any farmer needs to do their homework thoroughly on all the national and local regulations.
Makes sense. So we've talked about growing these as standalone crops. Are there more sort of integrated ways to do it, combining them with other farming activities?
Yes, some really interesting approaches are being explored. One is dual cropping.
Dual cropping.
Yeah, like growing daffodils within existing grassland. The grass can often still be grazed by livestock when the daffodils aren't actively growing or being harvested.
Oh, wow. Does that work well?
Apparently so. Some studies have shown really good daffodil bulb establishment, like up to 80% in those systems. So you get the galantamine and you still get use from the pasture.
That's pretty efficient.
Another strategy is using pharmaceutical crops as break crops in arable rotations.
So planting them between cycles of, say, wheat or barley.
Exactly. That can help break pest and disease cycles that affect the main crops, improve soil structure, and they can also provide good habitat for pollinators, which is an added environmental benefit.
So multiple benefits beyond just the pharmaceutical compound itself. Can farmers actually influence how much of the good stuff, the bioactive compound the plant produces?
Yes, they can, to a significant extent. Plants often ramp up production of these secondary metabolites in response to environmental stress.
Stress, like what?
Things like water availability, too much or too little temperature extremes, nutrient levels, even soil salinity. It's often a defense mechanism for the plant.
So stress can actually be good in this context.
Sometimes, yes. For example, some studies show drought stress increases codeine levels in poppies. High salinity or drought can boost artemisinin in sweet wormwood. Galanthamine in summer snowflake and spider lily can increase under specific stresses too.
That's counterintuitive and makes sense.
And interestingly, some research also suggests that organic farming methods can enhance the micronutrient and secondary metabolite profiles in certain plants as well.
So managing the environment is key. What about taking that control to the extreme, like with vertical farming? Does that have a role?
Absolutely. Vertical farming offers a really high level of control. Growing in stacked layers indoors, you can manage light, temperature, humidity, nutrients with incredible precision.
Which must be great for consistency.
Exactly. You get optimized, consistent production of high-quality raw material, and importantly, it's pesticide-free.
Big plus for pharmaceuticals.
Huge. So the benefits are batch consistency, tailoring growth recipes for specific compounds, potential for local supply, no herbicides or pesticides. You can really fine-tune plant characteristics. Institutions like the James Hutton Institute are doing work characterizing crops for these systems.
That precision sounds ideal.
Yeah.
Now, something that comes up is molecular farming or transgenic crops. Can you explain that?
Sure, molecular farming is where you genetically engineer a plant to produce a specific therapeutic molecule it wouldn't normally make. Usually things like recombinant proteins, antibodies, enzymes, vaccines.
So you insert a gene for, say, an antibody into the plant.
Essentially, yes. The foreign gene tells the plant's cells how to make that protein. You basically turn the plant into a little bioreactor. Crops like tobacco, rice, potatoes, safflower have been used in U.S. field trials for this.
Okay. But what's the situation in the UK?
Well, that's the crucial point. Commercial cultivation of these transgenic pharmaceutical plants is not currently allowed in the UK. Any products from them face the same very strict regulations as GM food crops here and in the EU. That largely restricts their use for pharma applications in this part of the world. Research is ongoing, but commercial growing isn't happening.
That's a really important distinction. So moving beyond those established examples like daffodils and poppies, what's the real-world impact right now? Are these newer techniques actually being used commercially?
Yes, they are, particularly in some areas. In the U.S., for example, corn has been grown commercially to produce proteins like avidin and beta-glucuronidase.
What are they used for?
They're used quite a bit in biochemical research and in diagnostic tests, so not direct drugs for patients, but vital tools. And beyond that, there are other therapeutic proteins made in plants that are currently in clinical trials, so the pipeline is growing.
Seems like there's global activity then.
Definitely. There are maybe around 20 companies worldwide actively developing plants to make pharmaceutical or industrial proteins. Field trials of transgenic crops have happened, as I mentioned, in the U.S., but also France and Canada.
What kind of things were they producing?
Things like antigens for a hepatitis B vaccine, human antibodies, human blood proteins, quite complex molecules. There's also work on developing animal drugs in plants like corn, just for animal feed, not for humans.
So what are the big picture advantages of using plants for this kind of production?
Well, we mentioned the potential for higher yields at lower costs compared to traditional methods. But another key advantage is leveraging existing agricultural infrastructure and expertise.
Right. Farmers already know how to grow things.
Exactly. They have the skills, the land, often the equipment. Growing pharmaceutical crops can be a really innovative way for them to diversify their business, maybe achieve better profitability, even if the tonnage is lower than corn or wheat, provided they choose the right crop and, crucially, get that buyer contract sorted.
Okay. Looking ahead now, what possibilities do you see emerging in pharma farming as the science develops?
Well, the potential for plants to be engineered or optimized to make an even wider range of complex therapeutic molecules seems huge, as we learn more about plant genetics and biotechnology.
Some more sophisticated drugs.
Potentially, yes. And there's also a really exciting prospect for biofarming in developing countries.
How so?
Because the potentially lower production costs could make essential medicines and vaccines much more accessible in places where they're desperately needed but currently unaffordable.
That could be a game changer.
It really could, and while those transgenic crops face regulatory hurdles in places like the UK and EU right now, ongoing research and maybe evolving regulations might eventually bridge that gap between the lab and commercial use more widely.
And what about sustainability?
That's another key area. Integrating pharma farming with sustainable practices like the organic methods we mentioned, or vertical farming, which uses resources very efficiently, that holds a lot of promise for environmentally friendly production.
That's a really compelling vision for the future. Now, for our listeners, let's dig into a kind of exclusive bonus insight. The challenges and opportunities. Because it's not all straightforward, is it? What are the main hurdles?
No, definitely not straightforward. One of the biggest concerns, especially with open field growing of genetically modified farm crops, is the risk of contamination
Contamination of what?
of the food chain, basically, for humans and animals, and also the risk of outcrossing pollen drifting and genes transferring to related food or feed crops growing nearby.
Right. You wouldn't want genes for producing a drug ending up in corn meant for breakfast cereal.
Exactly. Even if the protein itself wasn't harmful to eat, which it might be, the perception is a huge issue. Groups like COGEM in Europe have called for really strict separation of supply chains, even suggesting maybe we shouldn't use food or feed crops for this at all over there. Public trust is critical.
That makes sense. What other big challenges are there?
The regulatory landscape is definitely one. It's complex, and it varies massively from place to place. Trying to navigate the rules in the US versus the UK versus the EU, it's a significant hurdle for companies.
A patchwork of regulations.
Pretty much. And then there's the supply chain itself. It's still a niche sector, so you need specialized players who can handle the extraction and processing of these compounds reliably. That infrastructure is still developing.
And market predictability.
Yeah, that's another thing. Compared to established agricultural commodities, the market for specific pharmaceutical crops might be less stable, more uncertain. That adds financial risk for the farmers.
Okay, those are definitely significant challenges, but let's flip that coin. What are the really exciting opportunities, especially for someone thinking about getting into farming?
Well, the biggest one is diversification. It's a chance to tap into a potentially high-value market, create new revenue streams beyond just traditional crops. That's really appealing, especially for new entrants.
A way to find a profitable niche.
Potentially, yes. And as we've said, the possibility of producing pharmaceuticals at lower cost could make medicines more accessible globally. That's a huge societal benefit.
And the sustainability angle.
That's a big opportunity, too. Aligning pharma farming with sustainable practices like organic methods, dual cropping, vertical farming. That fits well with where agriculture is heading more broadly. Plus, plant-based production could genuinely help meet the growing global demand for complex drugs and therapeutic proteins.
And maybe boost rural economies.
Absolutely. Developing this industry could create new jobs, stimulate economic activity in rural areas where these crops are grown and potentially processed.
So it's clear pharma farming is this really complex mix, but with huge potential. If we were to sum up the key takeaways from our deep dive today, especially for our listeners interested in starting a farm, what would they be?
I'd say the main thing is that pharma farming is this fascinating blend of agriculture and biotech. It's got deep historical roots, but also a really promising future. It offers genuinely new ways to diversify crops and produce medicines, but it definitely comes with unique challenges that need careful thought and planning.
Right. And for anyone listening who is thinking about starting a farm, this is a really innovative area worth exploring, isn't it?
Definitely.
We'd encourage you to look into specific pharmaceutical crops. Which ones might suit your climate, your soil, your interests, research potential buyers, understand those contracts we talked about, and really keep up to date with the regulations because they do change.
Absolutely. And maybe just to leave you with a final thought, consider the possibility, however distant it might seem right now, that the future of your farm could actually hold the key to the next major medical breakthrough.
A pretty amazing thought to end on. Hitting that like button and smash that subscribe.